Ladies and gentlemen, we now have our Commissioner's address. Commissioner Rob Rogers first became involved with the New South Wales Rural Fire Service in 1979, originally as a volunteer member of the Belrose Rural Fire Brigade, before being appointed Deputy Fire Control Officer for the Greater Taree District in 1995. He's held a variety of different executive roles in the New South Wales RFS since 2001. And in 2011 he was appointed as the Deputy Commissioner. During the most recent fire season, he oversaw the statewide response to the fires. Commissioner Rogers was awarded the National Medal in 1995 and the Australian Fire Service Medal in 2004, and he was appointed to the role of Commissioner in July last year. Now, Rob, to the best of my knowledge, has never modelled on television or acted on a soap opera. Well, not yet. I shouldn't say he never will, but certainly not yet. But I do follow the Commissioner on Twitter, and I can tell you that he is a huge fan of the TV show Seinfeld. In fact, he recently posted a picture of the Seinfeld board game, which is called Festivus, for those of you who follow Seinfeld. So he's a huge Seinfeld fan, not that there's anything wrong with that. And I'm delighted that we have him here to talk to us and address us today. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please put your hands together and welcome to our conference stage, Commissioner Rob Rogers, AFSM.
I've got to say, if you work in the RFS, Seinfeld is well and truly alive, as is Yes Minister and Utopia. It's a combination of all of those, and never a day goes past that there isn't some reference like that. So can I just also acknowledge our Minister, the Honourable David Elliott, MP, Minister for Police and Emergency Services, and your President, Brian Madonna, and RFS staff, RFS volunteers, my executive colleagues, RFSA staff, and most of all, participants here in the room and also at home. It's definitely my great pleasure to be here because, as was said earlier, the fact that we've got people in a room together is quite a novel experience, particularly for because I've noticed that there's quite an aversion nowadays since COVID. You know, and I know I'm bad for it. Stick your hand out, and people look at you as if you've got leprosy or something. It's, I think we've all become a little bit withdrawn, and that's not the Australian way. And whilst respecting the health orders, and we have to follow that through, but I hope that fairly soon we'll get past that and we get back to the way life used to be, because human contact is very important, and the RFS is a very social entity, and that's why a lot of people join the RFS, because they make friends and they make lifetime friends, and part of that is obviously that human contact. So hopefully, and to be honest, when we're thinking about dealing with COVID, there's no place I'd rather be than New South Wales, because I think New South Wales has handled it very well, and I'm certainly glad I'm not south of the border. But anyway, that's for them to talk. Now look, I'm going to go through a presentation, but I will do it fairly quickly because I do want to leave some time at the end for questions, because I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. So I'll flick through it fairly quickly, but feel free to ask me some questions when we get to the end. And I do have technology here, and me and technology don't often work that well, so my apologies in advance if it doesn't work. Oh dear me, push the button. Oh, it's not going well already, is it? No. There you go, that says it all, doesn't it? It's lucky that I'm not in charge of anything expensive or complicated. It's really good to hear. I'll just talk a little bit about our history, and only because our organisation has an extremely proud history. And whilst we have to keep evolving and adapting, we also need to not forget where we came from. And that's why we just need to keep going back. And I think it's a little bit like Brian said about remembering our colleagues that we lost during the fire season, and obviously the residents and civilian fatalities as well. We have to keep remembering that, because that makes us try to do better. Oh, look, it worked. Jesus. And you've only got to look at some of those photos of those trucks, and those of you that are my age or older, that's not that long ago that those trucks were in service. And indeed, the truck, the International on the bottom right there, the one behind there, the Inter, that's from my old brigade, and they had that truck, that International, when I joined, and it was the sort of truck where you went to a fire, and for those of you that may not know, fires tend to happen on hot days, and those things, as soon as you're driving along and you went around a bend, vapour lock would happen, and you'd have no power because it was the fuel pump and the heat, evaporated fuel, and so there was all sorts of ingenious things that our brigade members did, putting electric fuel pumps and to try and get better fuel to them. But our people did the best they could, but basically they were pieces of shit. They really were. They really were. I mean, we all get nostalgic about the old trucks, but they were just plain awful trucks. They really were. And so, and you think about it, it was, I think it was around 1985 or something when the first Isuzus started coming along, and they were 83 or 85, something like around that time, and they were the forestry builds that built them. And look, we've evolved significantly since then. And we can all complain about trucks and that, but when you go back and do a bit of a reality check of what we used to have and what we have now, it's really chalk and cheese. Oh, this button. So you can see there, obviously, our history. And we've had various iterations of logos, and we've been through a lot of different entities. And when you think about it, back when it was local government, and those of us again that have been around for a while in the staff ranks would have worked for councils at one point. Indeed, at one part I worked for the Cessnock Council, looking after this area. And it was interesting, and the good thing was there was some great councils that supported the RFS, but the bad thing was there were some that really didn't. So you had the haves and have-nots, and that's been something that really permeated the RFS up until fairly recently, where we stopped that being capped on by the ability of the local government to pay, where we averaged their contributions over 20 years to try and flatten that, and then we could start sending a lot more trucks out west and building stations without it being constrained by council's ability to fund it. So that's made a huge difference. You won't see it all happen, but it'll take like a decade, but you'll start to see a big change. And I think you're already starting to see that. You look at New South Wales is no stranger to big fires, and there's been quite a lot of big fires over relatively short periods of time. Had one or two per decade of decent fires, I think, and there's some massive fires that have occurred over the years. And you see there, it just continues on, and up until that 2012-13 period, when we had obviously a lot of widespread fires, a lot of damage, and we thought that was a big fire season. And then we got to 1920, and I think that put everything into perspective. What we thought was a big fire season was no longer a big fire season. And I think it reset everything now. Indeed, I wonder now if what it will take for us to think we're having a big fire season after going through that. And when you look at it, and I like to think that that season was about 6 big fire seasons in one. It was just that big and covered that part of the state. And I think, as Brian said earlier, it started up in the north, and it just continued down. And I think we all became a little numbed to the amount of property loss that occurred. the amount of bush that was burnt, and indeed the impact on human life. It just became that numbers that were just going, and when you think about the amount of homes, 2,400 homes, and every one of those homes had a lifetime of that family in it. It's easy just to say that, but you think about the numbers of families that lost so much, and of course that doesn't even talk about the people that lost lives, lost loved ones, and they'll never recover from that. That's things that will be with them forever, and we've got to do our best. And those of us that obviously are providing support to the families of the firefighters that were lost, we'll continue that journey, and we'll continue to support those people, and we'll make sure they're never ever forgotten. And indeed, we're doing some work at the moment, and we're doing that with the RFSA. We'll be putting in a memorial at the RFS Academy to just make sure again that it's an RFS specific thing that will remember those people, including people like the airmen that were killed, and we'll make sure we keep doing that. Today's RFS, and it's an interesting thing, the RFS, and obviously you've got there some of the things we do, but we have a lot of different roles, and I know sometimes that causes, because people think, the RFS is just here about the brigades, and of course that is our absolute primary focus, because we don't have the brigades, then we don't have the firefighting force. But obviously we also have that role as the lead agency for bush and grass fires in the state, where we have to coordinate the other agency efforts to ensure that there's a greater synergy, and that there's a single effort irrespective of what agency it comes from. So there's that bigger, broader role we have as well to coordinate those activities and make sure that we're working as one. And as the Minister said, the relationship with the agencies is very important, and we work very hard at that, because it's not in public interest to have agencies bickering. They don't care what badge is on a truck. They just want someone to come and help them. So we've got to make sure we do that. So working at that, making sure we push things like hazard reduction, whether it happens on a national park, private land, council land, doesn't matter. We've got to make sure we lead that and make sure it actually happens, not sit by passively and waiting for someone to do something, because we are someone. That's it. That's what we have to do. And then that also extends into making sure where people aren't doing hazard reduction, we go in there and we're going to make them do that. And that's whether it's, again, on a national park, on a state forest and council land, private land. If people are threatened by the land, then we need to go in there, and if we agree it's a hazard, we need to make them happen, make them do that. So when you think about it, we're a combat agency, we're a lead agency, we're also a regulator. So there's quite a broad spectrum of things we have to juggle. But one of the important things we have to do that came out of that 2009 fires was public warnings. And public warnings is, since the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, it's part of our act, it's a responsibility we have. But warning the community has now become almost as important as fighting the fire. The effort that we put into it is absolutely huge. And I think we saw in this last fire season, the amount of reliance that people put on things like Fires Near Me is absolutely huge. And that relies on us putting accurate information in there. So the journey for us is to make that better, because I think we did well, but things like where fires are at any one point in time, is really important. But that's no good leaving that there for 4 hours, because as you know, the fires move considerably. And when people are making critical life decisions based on an app information, start to think about, well, how important is it to have accurate information? So things like that involves us getting better information from you in the field, and making sure we do things like flyover fires, making sure that we have good maps and putting that onto the apps. You can also see there bush and grass fires, structure fires, motor vehicle accidents, and in recent years delving into the rescue area. And the rescue area is an interesting one because it's never been one that we pursue because we don't want to go into competition with agencies for rescue. That's not our thing. But what we said was that if there was no other agency able to do it and we were the logical choice, then we would do that. And that's what's happened. We've only done it where we've been asked to do it, not chased it. And the interesting thing there is that that's been in some really remote areas, places like Pooncarie and Louth, where people think that they're a type of brigade that not really interested in progressing, and they've been incredibly receptive to that training and incredibly, professional in the way they approach it. And I think they do that because they know there's no one else there. There is no one else there to help. So again, it's about that someone has to do something, there's someone, and they stepped up. So congratulations to those brigades, and Menindi's coming online very soon, and we'll continue to do that again where we're asked to fill in gaps. Coordinating aviation, supporting our colleagues in the SES with flood and storm operations, and I know a lot of our firefighters, again, where there's no other service, they're the only emergency service there. And we'll be talking, and indeed I'm talking to Commissioner Carleen York about what we can do to make sure our brigades are ready to help those communities where there's no SES unit nearby. And again, it's about just trying to make sure we give the best service we can to the community. And the RFS in a lot of towns is the only sort of service that's there, so we've got to keep doing that. Community first responder, medical help. I think we did last year 900 assisting ambulance just to try and help, again, in those areas where there might be a delay, trying to just make sure, again, we're there for the community. And at the end of the day, it's your community, it's your people, it could be your relative, and we all want to try and make sure we help. And you'll see there just a snapshot of the amount of fire and other incidents that we've been attending. Even you look at that 2021, pretty quiet fire season, but still there's a lot going on each and every day. There's fires. Hazard reduction process. It's always a nice controversial thing about hazard reduction. There's not enough. Why aren't we doing it here? Again, it should be starting from brigade level. You should be saying in your area what's needed to be done to protect my local community. You need to elevate that then to the district. Your district takes that forward to the Bushfire Management Committee. You've got local representation on that committee. You've got your local district manager, the 2 volunteers also are on that committee, and they're there to advocate for you. So you should be talking to them. If you don't see hazard reduction happening, and it should be, say something, do something. Put in a proposal saying we want to do this and this is why. And we need to get that going, and we need to make sure that we're doing hazard reduction as much as we can. Again, hazard reduction works. There's the complaints process, the certificates to help private landholders navigate all the environmental guff, and then obviously education. It all comes to try and make people protected. And you look there, the total works plan, and it's quite a lot of it still, and actually a lot of it does, a lot of it gets done. You think of that 77%, and we want to get that higher, but it's still a lot of work being done by agencies across the state, trying to make sure that we get as much hazard reduction done as we can. But we're going to be doing some better tools soon to create maps on a daily basis of areas that might be suitable for burning. And then, of course, where we're not seeing things happening, we're going to be asking local areas, why aren't you burning? What's the problem? Let's get that going. We've got, where it's midweek, if there's not enough volunteers available, we'll help them with MIC crew. We'll put mitigation crews in there to help the brigades get that done. We need to focus on delivering on hazard reduction. Again, some more stats. And we keep saying it's a shared responsibility, bushfire protection, and it is. And it comes together with local people taking action, But you look at all those things, obviously, the bushfire survival plan, the engagement activities that I know a lot of you around the room are very involved in, community protection plans, which is something that seems to be well received, that we're going to be rolling more out, hotspot programs, community fire units, and the AIDA program. And the AIDA program, again, has been very popular with people where we're going in helping those people that can't help themselves and trying to make them safer and their property safer. So we do around 900 of those a year. So it's a really good program. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and we kicked off when I was looking after operations, and it's something I want to keep doing because that can make a huge difference to those vulnerable people. They might be, not able to be mobile, and we tell people to get out and they can't get out. If we can give them the best chance we can by making sure that their properties are safe, then obviously that's a good thing. Our people. That's our current number of volunteers and staff there, and the breakdown by people in the areas. So still a good level of membership. It's really good to see, and I think it's fair to say though that some people did leave the organisation after that last fire season, and I understand that some people thought, I've had enough, and I want to do something different. I don't want to keep doing this, and that's fair enough. But we've had 8,000 people coming in, which is good also. So that keeps our numbers good, and it's good to see some some good numbers in some of the western areas as well. Unfortunately, that's being challenged by some of the change in demographics we have, smaller communities contracting and people moving to regional centres. So, and that's again, and I'll talk a little bit about that soon, about some of our challenges going forward. And that's the breakdown of people that are, as they're categorised. And again, and operational, obviously some of those are not necessarily firefighting operational, but they go out and support the operations. But you've got a lot of people there that are still, you think about the amount of people that can mobilise in a big fires, and we saw that the last season. Demographics, and I think that's where one of our big challenges are. And if you look at the breakdown of the average age of our people, and if you start to see from that 45 onwards, you suddenly take all those people out as they age, and we don't have the same numbers coming through in the younger people. So we have some work ahead of us, and that's to continue. And I've got to say, I do believe the RFS is an agency of choice when it comes to volunteering, because 70-odd thousand people can't be wrong, but we have to try and make sure that we're attractive to those younger people, and that means we have to keep changing. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over. People, society's changed. You look at the connectedness of people, social media, all of those things. Things change, and we need to keep evolving the same way society has evolved. And obviously we'll be putting some targets, trying to get some younger people involved, and things like our cadet programs, expanding that, because we've got to get more people coming in. You can also see there the breakdown of the obviously our membership, the number, the group officers and deputy groups and captains and the like. And again, look, it's just an interesting stat. It doesn't really mean much, that, but it just goes to show there's a lot of people involved in doing more than just firefight, because obviously all those roles come with significant responsibility. So the membership, as far as female, we are better off than most other fire services around the country, but it's still not great. We still need to improve that. We need to get more women into leadership roles in our agency, both paid and volunteer, and that's something we'll be working, and we're doing some work at the moment with some people consultants about trying to make sure that our workplace is as safe as we can make it for women, and people feel comfortable and safe in that environment, because that's part of being able to attract them. So that's work that we're doing, but certainly we want to keep improving, because I think having the RFS represent the broader community, and it's representative of the membership of that broader community, is only a good thing for us. So we've already seen some great things from women in the RFS, and we want to try and encourage that some more. I spoke a little bit about the lower number of people in that younger age demographic, and that's something where we need to keep trying to focus on the cadet program. I think it's doing really, really great work, and what we've got to do is try and, if you look at that, you've got all those number of people that have gone through it, and almost half are female, which is good. But what we've got to do is try and, bridge the gap from those people completing the cadet program and then becoming members of brigades. And I know there is people that do it, but we've got to increase the number of people, because that will then again give a good feeder pool for our brigades to make sure that they're all sustainable. But over 10,000 kids gone through that program, so that's great, and congratulations to the people involved in that. Diversity of people, apart from obviously just having more females, but people from different backgrounds, people who have different preferences in life. I'd like to think, and I do think, that broadly we're a pretty welcoming organisation, and we've got to keep on that journey though to make sure that those people feel welcomed and valued. And things like the Mardi Gras, I think are great, and again it gives people a chance to express themselves, be who they want to be, and feel that we as an agency support that, which we do. So the challenges, and I think I spoke a little bit about our people, the need to increase the younger people coming into the RFS, but also those communities that are changing. And you go out west and some of those smaller towns are really dying. And they just, because there's been a change in demographics as far as farmers, so you don't necessarily have as many family farms anymore. Some of them are corporations, and that of course changes the way people work, changes the way people live and where people live. People are travelling further for work, and they seem to be more concentrating in those regional centres. And when you look at places like Dubbo that are expanding, Tamworth, all of those bigger rural towns are expanding, but at the expense of those smaller towns. And so that's going to put a lot of challenges on us and other emergency services, not just RFS, where you might have a town where it's got might have a fire rescue retain station, RFS station, SES, VRA. Some of those towns only get to that point, and using the old Western adage, the town ain't big enough for all of us. And we're going to have to work out, what does that mean? And that's going to need some mature, honest discussion amongst our own agency, but also with other agencies, to try and say, how do we keep providing a service for people? How do we capitalise on the limited pool of volunteers we have to try and make sure we keep providing that service? And when you look at global events and changes, and I think that comes down to the way that things are very much more public now. Every single thing that happens is on social media and TV before sometimes we even know about it. Sometimes we're seeing things in the news and we're thinking, well, we didn't know that was happening. And that changes enormously, because then my boss will be saying, what's going on? Why don't I know about this? And I'll then say, yeah, well, I didn't know about it either. So, we have to try and make sure that we stay across that. But it's a challenge, and that's an absolute thing. And I think the other part of it, think about the things like hazard reduction. When we do burn-offs, particularly around places like Sydney, the amount of scrutiny we get put under and the complaints that occur, it is something we have to look at. And it doesn't mean we stop doing it, but the way we communicate, the way we notify people, are things that we have to try and keep moving on. Technology is changing enormously fast, and we're trying to stay ahead of it, but you know, when you're spending the millions of dollars that government gives us to try and make sure we stay on this technology, it's important that we don't sort of target something that's sort of at the end of its life, rather something that's emerging. But when you do that, you have risks because it's not necessarily proven yet, and you might have to end up being a bit of a trailblazer for it and hope that it does work out. So we obviously tread a fine line. And scrutiny and accountability. And again, I mentioned social media because social media is something that it's very, very useful, but it can also be very poisonous. It can be extremely poisonous when people want to spread misinformation. So look, it's something we just have to stay across. 9 priorities, something we've rolled out, and I think we're almost finished some of those. The helmet rollouts occurred. There's still some to go, but we've rolled out thousands of them. And MDTs, hopefully tender will go out at the end of June. Respiratory protection, we're going to be communicating fairly soon, and we're going to put out a tender. Electronic membership application, 1-member website, all moving along quite quickly. And yeah, so look, there's a lot of work going on there. Now I have sort of run over time, and I was supposed to cut short, but anyway. With your indulgence, I might just go over a little bit of time. Is that all right with you, Mr. President? All right. Investing in our communities. Brigade stations. It is an absolute challenge, I've got to tell you. And we've got, and if you look at those stats where we've got 150 brigades that still don't have stations, the important thing is not all of them want a station either. So we've got to make sure that where we're putting our money is where those members want it. But one of the things that is challenging is brigades that don't have amenities. And I know, and I think Bruce is here, Bruce McDonald is Bruce, retired Deputy Commissioner, looking very relaxed, Bruce. And I know when Bruce is here, and I know Kyle, his replacement, one of the challenges is to make sure we get toilets to each brigade, and that they have male and female going to make them attractive to people. And we've tried to do this once. We did a survey, we got it, we put out money, and now we find that there's more. And I don't know what happened with that, but so we've got to focus on trying to make sure there's amenities in every station. So that's going to be something we'll focus on and get done. Partnering with communities. Now they're not brigade trucks, but they're farm firewise trucks. And again, in our, I guess, how do I say this? In our drive to try and get standardisation, and you know, we had to get rid of things like tanker trailers, but I think we've disconnected a bit from our farming community, and we've got to reconnect with them, and we've just got to try and make sure we understand what they've got and where it is, because the thing we want to do is get a fire truck to a fire quickly, and I don't really care whether that's something owned by RFS or fire rescue or a farmer. So we've got to try and work with these people and make sure that we feel they're part of the RFS, even though their vehicles may not. Tankers, again, it's quite a contentious issue. We still have more than 2,000 trucks that need to have work to bring them up to the latest safety equipment. It's a huge job. As the Minister said, there's been a lot of investment into our agency, and our target is to produce 200 trucks a year and 100 refurbs, which brings them all up to that latest safety standards. So, but that's a huge amount, and that's apart from our key builders, but I think it's another 18 or something regional builders to do the refurbs. So it's a huge amount of money being spent. I think it's $50–60 million a year that government's invested into the RFS fleet. Massive amounts of money. But because the size of our fleet, it's not a quick fix. It's not that quick for us to do. Our academy, it's been enormously successful, I've got to tell you. I've been out there the last 2 weeks for different things, and I've seen volunteers out there, staff out there, and I'm really proud of the staff of the academy, of the way that works. And the plan for this year, to have 11,000 nights of accommodation there for people, 49,000 meals. And for those of you that have been there, I hope you enjoyed it, and those that don't, please try and get on a course and get out there, because I'm sure you'll enjoy it. The rooms are booked out regularly and it overflows into the local control centre. I know actually that 20,000 helmets have been distributed so far, the BR9s, so there's a lot of those getting out there. And again, respiratory protection, working with University of Wollongong, understanding what we need to do better at protection, but also not at the expense of creating heat stress for people, because there's a balance there. You can protect people's airways, but then cause them to pass out from heat stroke. So we've just got to make sure that we do the right thing with this. Aircraft, a lot of aircraft, helicopters, lessons learned. And obviously there's a body of work, and as the Minister said, we have to learn from what occurs. And there's things we did enormously well in that fire season, but there's things we can do better. Community warnings, trying to make sure we understand exactly where fires are, and obviously then upgrading our fleet and making sure our people are as safe as possible. They're sort of things in my mind that are really standouts for us. There's some parliamentary inquiries going on, obviously koala populations, and then health impacts, and there's coronials going to start fairly soon. So I think it's August the coronials will start, and they will be things that we'll be engaged with for some months. Mental health and wellbeing, you would have seen 18 people being employed to support our people. A lot of those people based in the area commands. And that's again another lesson from that season. We need to look after our people's mental health better than we have. So this will provide incredible support when you think about the CIS people under Paul Scott that have done an incredibly brilliant job over many years, but we also need to ramp that up, and that's what that's designed about. One of the things that, and then there's some of the stuff I've already spoken about and I won't repeat, but the grievance stuff, which you know we're working on at the moment, and we'll get the results of that survey out fairly soon. But also, one of the other things that isn't mentioned there, which I think was something Brian was talking about, was about that supporting our people. So we want to kick the benevolent fund off this year as well, to make sure that we've got a standing fund to make sure that we'll look after our members, look after the members and look after their families in an enduring way, look after the kids of those people. So we want to make sure that kicks off, and that'll be something we'll start off this year. A lot of money, as the Minister said, has been coming in, and look, and there's some further funding bids at the moment that will be announced in due course. But there's been a lot of money invested in the RFS, as the Minister said, and what our challenge is, and my challenge is, to make sure that money is spent wisely and that it does it fulfills the purpose that it's supposed to. I will finish there. Did you want to ask any questions? Or do you want to...